My name is Gitau. I am a gender equality advocate and a gender specialist. I work with Action Aid International Kenya. I work in the CampusMeToo campaign, which is a Pan-African movement advocating against sexual harassment in higher learning institutions from staff towards students. Sexual harassment is deeply ingrained in our institutions of higher learning, and most of these students in our higher learning institutions are suffering in silence, and no one is there to protect them, to speak out for them. So we saw this as a conversation to talk about, because we find that a lot of students are being pressured to exchange sexual acts in favor of good grades. And we see that it gives students a voice to speak about some of these issues that are facing them, more so on sexual harassment. So we launched this campaign last year in November, specifically on the 19th of November at the University of Nairobi, whereby more than 500 students were gathered in University of Nairobi to launch this campaign and to say that they're saying no to sexual harassment in higher learning institutions. They're giving a voice to those students who feel they don't have a voice. We collected signatures for preparation of the 5 student demands that it came up with. And the first student demand that the students came up with to support, also back this campaign, was to facilitate all newly enrolled students to watch an educational resource on sexual harassment. The second one was to conduct an yearly training for all staff members in the university so that they can have also an understanding of what really sexual harassment is. The third one is to appoint a gender officer who will be involved in matters of responding and recognizing sexual harassment complaints from students. The fourth one is basically on establishing an investigation committee whereby if students have experienced unfair or missing marks, they're able to get help from this committee. And the fifth one basically is the implementation of all the 4 that I've talked about. The students have developed a student toolkit to help in preventing or just helping other students to know how to prevent when it comes to cases on sexual harassment, to know how to collect evidence, and not just collecting evidence, but collecting evidence safely, to know where to report, and if they have something or they need to report to someone. You find that a higher percentage, as based on our campaign last year, is they speak to their friends, or at times they don't speak to anybody. And also even based on our statistics last year, so according to our campaign, 49% of female students have experienced sexual harassment. 24% of male students have experienced sexual harassment from a university staff member. And out of this, we see that 66% of these people these students who are being sexually harassed experience it from either a professor or a lecturer. So that's why we feel that it is important we start discussing this issue and also calling out every stakeholder. This campaign is about creating safe spaces for everybody to speak out and not to feel victimized, and also for the different organizations to just stand in solidarity with these students, because there is power in numbers. Because if they're speaking alone and there is no one out here to help them, then it will be a very big gap. And also for the institutions to ensure that they're strengthening their policies, and also they're reviewing their policies, and they're creating channels for these students to report, because they may have these experiences on sexual harassment, but where are they going to report, and how can they report? And to the person they're reporting to, is this person a person who can be trusted by these students? So there are a lot of things that we need to factor in, and especially when we're dealing with matters on sexual harassment, because it is very important to understand that this is a sensitive matter, and to also understand that even when these students come out and speak out, it's that they have courage, and also to understand never to blame the victim, because it is never the victim's fault. There is hope of healing. If you have that trusted person that you can speak to, you can go to and speak to that person. Most of the people that, of course, that I talk to, you find that they have a lot of scars and they have not healed from some of these experiences that they experienced when they were at an early age. I'd just like to give hope to people who have experienced some of these issues, because you find that it is something so torturous to the mental well-being of most children who've grown up in these places where you see your mom being beaten up by your dad, or you see your friend's mom being beaten up by their father, or the other way around. It is something that is not right, and every person have the right to be respected and live a life of dignity. Because if we do not respect another person's rights, then it feels, for me, it's something that I do not ascribe to if a person's right is not respected. We have different helplines in the Red Cross, 1199, the National GBV hotline. We have 1195, and also ActionAid has an SMS platform, 21094. So there are a lot of platforms whereby if you're having all these issues that you can share and get help. Institutions of higher learning are not for perverts to thrive, but for students to experience their career growth. And also for the parents. We also have parents' toolkits. For the lecturers, we have lecturers' toolkits, because sometimes you realize that some of these people want to help, but they do not know how to help the students. You have a story, you can share it, because there's power, as I've said, in sharing a story. Give courage to that person who feels alone, because you never know. It will maybe a breakthrough to this person and make them feel loved and wanted.
My name is Jael Diana. I'm a student at university in Kenya. I have been involved in the campaign, CampusMeToo campaign, for the past 1 year. I am the face of that particular campaign. The campaign has been going on around universities in Kenya, and we want to raise awareness against sexual harassment in higher learning institutions. I have been sexually harassed in school. This when I joined university in my first year, I was 17 years old, quite naive, and I can say I felt coerced into a relationship that shouldn't have existed in the first place. If only my lecturer had been professional. Out of fear of failing my units, and out of fear of being picked on by the lecturer, I fell prey to a predator. Having been involved with the CampusMeToo campaign, we have had so many issues of students who couldn't graduate because the lecturers didn't give them marks because they refused to have sexual affairs with them. We've heard of students who wanted to commit suicide because of such issues. We've had students drop out of school because of matters related to sexual harassment. The current issue at hand here is that we face in universities is sexual harassment, which still falls under gender-based violence in the terms of imbalance of power in relationships that are created in regards to sexual harassment. Our discussion of today, which is sexual harassment, we've had testimonies of students come up to say that they have still been sexually harassed by lecturers or staff, members of staff of the institutions, even when they're at home. This happened in the event that a student cannot be able to attend a session or do an exam because they don't have the necessary equipment that is required to do that. So what happens is a student would call the lecturer or whosoever is in charge and say, hey, I'm not able to do 1 or 2, and the lecturer will say, if you offer me this sexual favor, then I could consider your issue. Some students have received emails, some others have received explicit images from staff members of institutions, and this is part of what we are talking about. We want to raise awareness so that we can end this issue of sexual harassment once and for all. There are different forms of gender-based violence that students, to be specific, experience in institutions. There's rape, there's sexual harassment. To be specific, I want to talk about sexual harassment. Sexual harassment is any form or any sexual conduct that is unwanted or uncalled for. Sexual harassment can be experienced in 3 forms: physically, verbally, or non-verbally. The physical essence is somebody might grab you, or somebody fawning around or touching you inappropriately. The verbal forms include unnecessary jokes, catcalling, inappropriate comments about somebody's stature and stuff like that, and non-verbally, winking or sending emails or messaging or sharing explicit images to another person that they haven't asked for. All these are forms of sexual harassment. There are hindrances to factors that contribute to students not being able to open up and talk about these issues. One of them, according to the study that we had last year, when we interviewed about 1,051 students, we found out that students do not want to speak up on the issues of sexual harassment because, first of all, they're not sure that they will be taken seriously, like the institution will not take them seriously. The other one is themselves, they don't think the issue is so important that that they need to be heard or they need to be listened to and helped. Some other reasons is most students fear the negative social consequences of speaking out about issues, sensitive issues such as sexual harassment. Our society, there's some negative thing ingrained in us that we mostly blame victims and not perpetrators. So in Kenya at the moment, the blame is usually shifted on the victim and not the perpetrator. Somebody would ask you, how were you dressing at this particular time? Why did you do this? But that should not be the case. The case should be, why has that person done that to you at all instances? Because students should not be blamed. We should set up a mentality of blaming perpetrators and seeking justice for the victims. There are the reasons that as to why students do not want to speak up on issues of sexual harassment is because they fear that it might not be confidential. Somebody wants to talk about the issue, but then they probably want to talk to the officer in charge and get their issues solved, with some confidentiality. So the moment that they have doubts that maybe there'll be rumors or this issue will be spoken in public, then they shy away and withdraw from talking about their issues. The issue at hand that we face at the moment is sexual harassment in institutions. That in itself is a form of gender-based violence. When we consider the power dynamics at play and the imbalance in power of the relationships that sexual harassment comes with. So this period is a very impactful time and important moment for us who want to advocate for end of sexual harassment in institutions, to raise our issues and to have the conversation going and to ensure that the relevant ministries, Ministry of Education, Ministry of Gender and Sport, and our universities implement and help the students end sexual harassment in institutions. The Constitution of Kenya is lacking as far as sexual harassment and protection of students and prosecuting of issues of sexual harassment is concerned. The Constitution mentions that the fine for any person who's a perpetrator of sexual harassment is 100,000. That is a very little amount of money for a professor or for a lecturer. They can easily get that. And these are some of the hindrances that we face as we try to foster this idea and to fight against sexual harassment in institutions. So there's also call for reviews of laws and constitutions as far as sexual harassment is concerned.